We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hi, welcome to the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, and we have a special guest today. In just a few minutes, Amanda Johnson is going to be joining us by phone. And Amanda is a transformational message coach, and she helps self-published authors get their book together, write it, focus, take you through all the steps to getting it published. So I want to talk for just a minute about why we need people like Amanda in today's book publishing world. I come from mainstream, as a lot of you know, and it used to be that your publisher, whether it was a big one like Simon & Schuster or a small one, would do all of that stuff for you. However, there was a price to pay. And in most cases, if you were writing a nonfiction book, it was called the book proposal. And I used to coach people through this torturous process of writing the book proposal, which is usually not a whole lot of fun. It can be. I'm not saying it never is, but for most people, it's quite a job. And then the way it was in the dark ages now with mainstream publishing was that a lot of proposals that were really good almost made it. So a lot were turned down. And that is one of the reasons that I think the self-publishing revolution has taken hold, because now we have the technology to do all of this yourself. Except it's confusing. When I came from mainstream and started to really see the writing on the wall and see how many people were now going to publish their books, and especially go for ebooks as the technology got better, I had to sort, like a lot of you do, through all this like forest of things that have to be done. For example, what was book formatting? Was book formatting for a print book the same as formatting for an ebook? What did all of this cost? How do you get a book cover? Is it thousands of dollars to get a book cover, or can you get one for $100 on the web, or can you do it yourself? How do you find a printer? In the old days, printers used to print something like 2,000 copies or 5,000 or 10,000 copies. Now those days are long gone, but that was like the minimum you had to get. So you had a lot of stacks of cartons that people used as furniture, which was actually their books, you know. That used to be the old joke. Today, publishers will print a minimum of 50 copies, so everything has changed. But then you had to sort through editing. Do I need an editor? That's the question that people always ask. And then what's a copy editor? What's the difference between a copy editor and a content editor? So there's a zillion moving parts to this, and how to sort it all out. And so what has happened is, in the self-publishing world now, we have a lot of people, like our first guest, Amanda, who are helping authors find their way through this maze. So, Amanda, are you there?
I am here.
Good.
The connection is a little funny, but we'll make it work.
Yeah, I can hear you okay. Can you hear us?
Okay, good. Yeah, it's a little crackly, but I can make out most of it.
Okay, good. So tell us, why do you call yourself a transformational message coach?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show tonight. I'm really excited to play with you and Susan, and I love what you're doing for authors, and I'm just grateful to be part of it, so thank you. The reason why I call myself a transformational message coach is because my whole life has really been about messages. It's been about paying attention to the messages that were being given by the media, by the music, by the movies, by the books that we are reading, and I've always been really, really passionate about it. And I became even more passionate about it when I had my own book idea about 6 years ago now. And I got really, really excited about getting the message on paper and getting it out to the people who needed it, and I couldn't wait. And then something happened. There are fun sirens outside. I'm sorry if you can hear those.
That's okay. We're fine.
When I actually got a hold of the person that I wanted to work with to work on the book, and she wasn't a book coach, but she was someone who could really help me push my message to the masses very quickly. She was like celebrity level, one of the teachers from The Secret.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really, really excited because when I'd gotten my idea for my book, I'd said, my message is so in alignment with the law of attraction that's being shared in the world right now. This was 2007 when that movie came out. What if I could partner with someone like that to get this message out more quickly to the people who need it? And so I set my intention to attract a secret teacher. And 3 months later to the day, she walked into a sizzler behind me and invited me to a workshop.
Wow, law of attraction at work, huh?
It worked. And what was so amazing about it was, just 3 months earlier, that day when my mentor had asked me, what book are you going to write? What value do you have to give to the world? The very first thing that came up for me was, I don't have anything to give to the world. I have no idea. Because if you looked at every area of my life, I was feeling extremely broken. Physically, I was almost crippled. Emotionally, things were a wreck. My marriage was on the rocks. My finances were, non-existent, and it seemed impossible to bring back from the devastation that was there. It was just a really, really horrible time in my life. So when someone said, what do you have to give to the world? I had to dig really deep.
Wow.
I had to, go beyond what I saw and really look for that thing. What is it that I'm here to do?
So you had to focus, right?
I did. And it actually, for me, it was a miracle. It really was, because I left my mentor's house when she asked me that question, bawling, mascara just running down my face, past TV, and I probably shouldn't have been driving the mountain roads that I was driving in that condition. And I kept asking myself that question. I don't know. What value do I have to give to the world? What could I give? And about halfway home, I realized that there was this one area of my life that I was doing pretty well in. In fact, I was getting pretty good results, and that was my parenting, because I had been using the law of attraction without even knowing what it was, because it was all of my training as an educator. It was all of my training in the Honors Institute that I was in. I was using everything that I had learned in my life experience to raise this child so that he wouldn't be as limited as I was, because I knew that there were some things that I had heard, some stories that I believed when I was a kid that just had really limited my life experience. And so my commitment to him was to not limit him and to give him only empowering messages about who he was. So when he said at the ripe old age of 2.5 years old, someone called him a bad boy, and he said, no, I'm not a bad boy. I just made a bad choice.
Wow. That's amazing.
I realized that I was doing something right. I had broken a legacy somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what I wanted to put in the book. And to answer your question, why do I call myself a transformational message coach, is because I didn't write that book until earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, it's not the book that I was going to write 6 years ago. I was going to write a how-to. This is how to do it. Very systematic, very logical, very
like a how-to parenting book, sort of?
Yes, like a lot of tips and tools. This is how you do it. This is what you say. This is what you don't say.
So your message kind of evolved, which often happens. Don't you find that with your coaching, that and I have worked even with some of your clients who you've referred to me, that sometimes their message does evolve, right? And it's not till 3 or 4 years later that it really comes out.
Yeah, and that's what that's why I call myself a transformational message coach, because most of the people who show up in my space say things like, I've always wanted to write a book, but I have no idea what I would write about. And I just thought that was the craziest thing for anyone to say for the longest time. Like, how could you want to do something but not know even a direction?
Right.
But what I realized was that this desire to write a book for so many people in the world today is really just a deep desire to reconnect with what they're meant to do in this world. And so part of the process, and I know you do this with your authors as well, is helping them to drill down to the core of who they are, to look at their story and say, what's a lesson that life has been trying to get you to learn your whole life? And have you really learned it?
Yeah, you and I do the same thing when we focus people into writing the book. And do you find, as I often do, that sometimes connecting with their emotions is a really powerful part of this process, right?
Yes. And I know because of the work that I've seen you do with some of my authors, that just like myself, what happens is, and I think one of the reasons why a lot of books really fall flat, right? Because we've seen those books. We don't get through them. We don't get through them.
And they have beautiful covers, right?
They have beautiful color. Some of them even have bestseller stickers on them.
Yeah, true, because all their friends bought it the same day on Amazon.
Yes. And I always look at those and I think, gosh darn it, why couldn't you have found someone who would tell you the truth about this? And it's not that they don't have great ideas, and it's not that they don't have really important messages to share. They're important messages, but the way that they're communicated is it just falls so short of what's possible for not just the reader, but for the messenger, for the person writing that book.
Right.
There's so much opportunity to go back into a story and to sit inside of that mucky muck. I'm telling you, chapter 2 and chapter 3 of my book rocked my world while I was writing it, because it took me back to a time and place that was icky, dark. In fact, I had a really hard time figuring out my timeline at some points, because I was in such darkness and so many clouds in that time of my life, that when I went back and I thought, well, shoot, how old was he when that happened?
Right. And sometimes it's if you can't, that does happen. And I remember something Andy Rooney told me when I interviewed him once, where he said, if you plan to write a book, you're going to be surprised, because you're going to find out, if you go back and dig up the facts, it didn't happen the way you thought it did. So, but it's the emotional truth.
Us, and working with these authors, that's the gift. Is because when you really start asking those questions and you start trying to connect the dots, because your job is to help, our job is to help connect all those dots for them and help them see it, not as they saw it back then, but as it really was meant to be seen in light of their whole life story.
So it's kind of like the emotional truth, right? Getting to that.
It really is. And the transformation that occurs when someone realizes, one of my most recent authors, she's been with me for almost 2 years now. She came to a retreat 2 years ago next month. And when she stood up at that retreat, she said, I want to write this book, and I want to write it about moving from disillusionment to joy. And I thought, wow, that's really powerful. How are you going to do that? And so we worked for 3 days. And what came up for her was that she wanted to write a story about everyone else and their journey from disillusionment to joy.
Wow.
And she tells this story too. In fact, we're about ready to put one of her testimonials up on my website, because what happened for her was so powerful. Because as we started to really look at what is the message, what were those turning points in your life, we realized that there were some parts of her message that she wasn't getting yet. She couldn't even put words to them and integrate them enough to communicate them to someone else. So that's why when she was thinking about going out for speaking engagements, or, trying to share through coaching, she'd get stuck in herself, because there was something that just wasn't quite clicking.
Right.
And it wasn't on the paper, it was inside of her. And oh my gosh, I'm telling you, for 15 months, well, let's see, she's been with me 2 years. She launched in March. So yeah, for about 15 months, we did the transformational work. We dug and we dug and we dug, and we looked at, and it's all a line of questioning, because you and I, we can see those things, right? We can see usually where that hitch is.
Right. We can see the places where they don't want to go, and sometimes guide them there. I know that you're an expert at that as well. And, one of my favorite sayings is, when the hero is having a good time, the reader isn't.
That's a good one. I like that.
That comes from a book called Immediate Fiction. And that's what I pull out when I see they're not going to go to that place.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, that was the thing, is how to, and there was so much resistance around it because it was her whole worldview. Mm-hmm. It was actually a core belief that she had about God that had it all jilty and kind of jumbled in her head. And so when we drilled down and we looked at relationships and we looked at all these different things and all the challenges that came up for her during this book process, all of that is a gift, because that's all a reflection of what's going on the inside. It's like you say, I want to share this message with the world. It's like the universe says, okay, this is what we need to make sure you handle before you get out there, so that
right.
you're strong enough to do it.
And that's something that I know you've done from the beginning is that, and I really do understand in a deeper sense what you mean by a transformational message coach, because I've heard from your clients that you are an expert at doing that with them, getting them to that core message and holding their hand while they go through whatever they have to get to it. But you do other things as well. I just want to make sure we get that in, that if someone
Absolutely.
comes to you, I know we have some of your covers up on the screen too, right? But if someone comes to you, you can sort of take them through the whole process, right?
Yes, we do. We take them through the whole process, and for that reason, we don't work with a whole lot of authors, because my commitment is really to be the pivot point. The one that holds. The company's name is True to Intention, and what I know is that when you have an intention for a book, it's so easy for that intention to get diluted or off track or confused. And that doesn't just end when the penning of the manuscript is done. That happens when you're given book design options and it doesn't quite feel right for some reason. When you're given interior layouts and you look at that and you say, oh, it doesn't quite feel good, right? And so what would happen is my authors would get to the end of the manuscript and I watch them, and Jean-Noel, I've had some amazing coaches in my life, right?
Yeah.
And they've all said, you're going to have to build a team. And I told them for a long time, I'm never going to run a team. I'm going to be a solo act. And the only reason I did it was because of the pain that I saw my authors going through. That they would, put their heart and soul, go through this transformational process and literally become changed people, ready to take on the world. And then they would hand their baby, this beautiful manuscript, to a designer who wouldn't even read it, didn't even really have a long enough a conversation to understand who their market was and what the heart of the message was. And they'd get this thing back and they'd just cry.
Right.
They literally would weep. Like, how do I make it better? How do I tell him? And so I said, never mind, I'll do it. And so, because I ended up doing it anyways, right?
Right.
They're having all this emotional stuff come up, and I'm the one on the phone with them saying, with the designer saying, okay, how about if we try this and this and this? So I just said, screw it. I'm just going to do the whole program, because I may not be able to work with a ton of people, but the ones that I work with, I know they're going to be served from start to finish, because I cannot bear to see them fall through the cracks.
Right. That was a good move to guide them through the entire process, right?
Yes. Yeah, the whole thing. And even to the point where, we have, once they've produced the book and we walk them through that process of self-publishing, we put on a very large event every year that is really community-driven. It's twofold. One is it's a really good opportunity for them to speak their message in front of hundreds of people that they don't know. And second, it's a really good opportunity to bring their family and friends into the space of transformation. So we call it Dare to Dream. And the goal, there's two goals. One is, like I said, to launch the books. The second one is to help their family members and colleagues and loved ones tap into their own dreams and get on the journey themselves. Maybe not a book, but a business or a nonprofit or something, because we have the expertise in our community to really serve any dream that gets sparked in that room.
And I see that you've got the whole process covered, and we're going to go to a break in a minute, so I want to make sure that people know how to get in touch with you. So tell us, how can they contact you?
The very best way is through email. It's Amanda@true2intention.com. That's TrueIntention.com. And that's the website address as well, true2intention.com.
And can they, do you offer a consultation or?
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
In fact, two things. One is, they can absolutely contact me for a 30-minute session. I'm happy to do that. And secondly, I'm getting ready to launch a call series about how I wrote, published, and launched my #1 bestseller in less than 3 months.
Great, and we're going to have you in the studio next week, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm giving away that whole 7-step process.
Yes, good. So we'll look forward to that. And so if you would like to talk to Amanda, give her a call and go to her website. Check out truetointention.com, and we'll see you next week in studio, Amanda.
Awesome. Thank you. I can't wait.
Thank you so much for being with us. So we're going to go to break, but stick around because we have Rachel Karu coming up, and she is a recovering perfectionist. I can so relate to this, except she's recovered and I'm not. So I am going to look forward to getting tips on how to dump my perfectionism as soon as we come back from this break. You're listening to The Book Beat here at LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk.
Hi, this is Elena, inviting you to join me every Wednesday at noon for Elena's Beauty Talk and more, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, I'm Jerry Bell of the Daz Band and New Birth.
And I'm Brahima Arsalan.
Inviting you to join us every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Time for Jerry Bell's R&B Soul Classics, baby.
Join us as we play some of the greatest hits of soul and R&B and listen in to interesting discussions with the legends of the music.
So don't you forget, join us on the Jerry Bell's R&B Soul Classics. You'll love it. Exclusively on latalklive.com.
You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio.
Or watch us and listen directly at latalklive.com, baby.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure.
This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk, baby. We're music.
Welcome back to the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior with my guest today, Rachel Karu. Am I pronouncing that right?
Nicely said.
Karu?
Yes,
okay, great.
Thank you.
And that music, by the way, that bumper music you're hearing is written by my brother, Rick Fleischman, of Visual Music Service. And I really like this. He picked up it's great for the show, Rick. Thank you. So, Rachel.
Yes.
I'm fascinated by the fact that you are a recovering perfectionist. And hold up your book for us. It's
Sure.
called Stepping Into More, Lessons from a Recovering Perfectionist. So, and you said it was a car accident, right? That made you see, is that true? I read that in your PR stuff? Or
Well, one of my first passions was always performing.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
And I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts many, many years ago and didn't get into their second year program, which was my first big rejection. And at that time, I turned my back on performing for over 20 years.
Wow.
And I was even the human resources manager at EMI Music Distribution. No one had a clue that I sang.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so all of that changed about 7 years ago when I did have a car accident. And that ultimately led to physical therapy which led me to notice a flyer for a workshop called Joy of Singing. And I thought,
I see.
what the hell is this?
So the car accident caused you to take a break from your routine, kind of, or did it?
It just woke me up, and I believe there are no coincidences,
right.
and that led me to find out about this workshop, which I wound up taking, and that really launched me back into owning the fact that I am a performer, and I started producing cabaret shows, and then I also started incorporating singing into my work as a coach and a speaker and a facilitator.
So your whole attitude changed, right?
It really changed everything for me.
Because you say you were born with this gang of gremlins, and and the leader was the perfectionist guy. Is that sort of?
Yeah. So we all have gremlins, which are those tapes, right? The self-talk that are either trying to keep us small or perhaps protected us at one time but aren't now. And what I talk about in the book is 3 aspects of myself. The first is the perfectionist, which is one of my gremlins. Unfortunately, we have many. The second is what I call the professional, which is sort of my persona, if you would, and knows how to show up and knows how to look and sort of puts on a little mask. And the third is my performer. And the performer is really who I am when I'm connected and grounded to my higher self.
Is that the one you like to hang out with?
Absolutely. Always looking forward to those moments. Yes.
So I'm fascinated by the fact that you didn't make this audition, and then you wouldn't sing for 20 years, really?
Anytime I would attempt to sing, basically my arms would fall asleep at my side. I took some classes. I took a singing class many years ago, and I was so freaked out that I literally had to write down when I was going to move a certain way because I was so tense and so uncomfortable.
Wow, that is extreme.
Yeah.
That was your perfectionist part kind of kicking in there?
Big time. Yeah.
Wow. So what was your recovery process? I mean, how did you really let go of the perfectionism?
Well, it's a journey. It's always going to be an issue for me. And the goal is not necessarily to get rid of those gremlins, it's to really understand them. And I think of my coaching is sort of like going to the gym. On the one hand, we're building the muscle of really gaining clarity on our values and our passions and who we are when we are connected to our higher self. And the second muscle we're building is really giving those gremlins a voice. And understanding why are they here, what triggers them, so when they are activated, we can become more of a third-party observer in our head and create a little space and come to a conscious choice instead of knee-jerk reaction, letting our gremlin in the driver's seat.
I see. So why are they here? What did your gremlins tell you? Why are they here?
Well, really, perfectionism is a shield for a cover-up, really, for shame or judgments or fears that we have. If we can look perfect and put on that perfect persona, then people won't really know our imperfections. And for me personally, really it was about learning that I don't have to do everything 100%. And that it's more about the journey and not necessarily the end destination all the time.
Well, I think a lot of us come into the culture which kind of learning that we're flawed or something's wrong with us, right? And so are you saying that the perfectionism is an attempt to kind of fight that and cover it up, and sort of we're going to this extreme of perfectionism because we think there's something wrong with us, right?
Exactly. And oftentimes a part of that is shame. And shame really is that belief that we're not worthy, we're not good enough, and it stops us from getting the ultimate human experience, which is connection. And one of the lessons that I've learned is that shame lives in secrecy. So the more that you can own what your triggers are, own what your shame is about, recognize your irrational beliefs, then you can start to shame. Once you bring it out, it loses its power, and you can start to really live more your authentic self.
And so how did this affect your singing? Like, what happened?
Well, I mean, I wasn't singing except to my kids. I was singing at home and singing in the car and singing in the shower. But as soon as I took this workshop, I started auditioning at first for community theater. But then I realized it was just too much with my professional career and my kids and family. So then I actually had signed up for through my daughter's school, they had an auction, and I saw something called vocal yoga. Okay, what's that? I wound up taking a couple of lessons. I bid on it and got it. And it was a opera singer, and I showed her a video of me singing in a workshop. And she said to me, "What are you doing? You're a performer. Like, hello, what's going on?" And then she said, "Have you ever heard of parlor singing?" And I, "What's that?" She goes, "Well, you can, kind of go in a home, somebody's house, and charge your friends." And at first I thought, I don't want to charge anybody. But I wound up, what I did is we have a friend who has a lovely home in Beverly Hills. I invited about 50 people. And that was sort of my coming out party. And I didn't charge them. And I sang, and I brought in a friend of mine who also sang, and then I had the piano player who also did some solos. I made it a whole show. And then from there I wound up creating cabaret shows at clubs and charging people.
Wow. What a concept.
Yes, it was good.
And I've heard that you could break into song at any moment, even here, right?
Perhaps.
Would you like to? Go ahead.
Sure. So I'm just going to sing a little snippet, and this is something that's been percolating on my head for an intention of mine right now.
Okay.
Happy days are here again. The skies above are clear again. So let's sing a song of cheer again. Happy times, happy nights, happy days are here again.
All right.
Oh, thank you. Applause and everything.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I feel like I am in a cabaret.
Cool.
Yeah. And so you have moved from really not singing at all to being able to burst into joyous song, right?
Yes.
What a different feeling that must be.
It's very empowering, and part of my message as a coach is about learning how to be more integrated as a person. And for me, singing really represents values around creativity and self-expression, and to find a way to actually feel more integrated and not compartmentalized, like now I'm a business person, now I'm mom, now I'm performer, is just really empowering. And that's a lot of the work I do with my clients too, is to help them get clear about who are you, what are those values, what are those passions, and how can you bring more of yourself into all aspects of life.
So in coaching, do you help them get rid of perfectionism or overcome it, or just work on a lot of different aspects?
I am a professional and personal development coach.
Okay.
So I work in organizations with executives. I also work with individuals as a career and life coach. It doesn't matter, though, whatever type of coaching I'm doing, it always starts by looking within and using an inside-out approach. So there's always core themes around what I was mentioning, values, gremlins, and then from there, it really just depends on whatever the client's journey is and what their agenda is.
Now, is all this in the book? Hold the book up again.
Thank you. Yes, so the book, Stepping into More, Lessons from a Recovering Perfectionist, thank you, is part one of a 3-part project. It is a autobiographical self-help book, so it is about my journey, and yes, it includes some of the stories that I'm sharing today, and there's also questions at the end of each chapter for the reader to reflect on. So this is part one. Part two, I'm going to be producing a CD of songs to accompany the book. I reference over 30 songs in the book, so I will be choosing some of those songs and creating a CD. And then part three, I'm going to create a keynote and a one-person show where I'm singing as I'm sharing my story.
Now I'm trying to relate this to the book. Tell me again how the CD relates exactly to the book.
Sure. So part of the core theme throughout my story is my love for singing and how I started, how I stopped, and how I reconnected. And I reference many, many different songs throughout the book that either were a part of my life at different phases or that have certain meanings for me.
I see.
And then the CD will be a collection of songs that I reference in the book.
So there will be a CD that's going to accompany this?
Exactly.
Or, I see, I get it. So it seems like this transformative process you've been through, I mean, this must be affecting your life in a lot of ways. right? Because to be able to just burst into song like that has this made you bolder in other areas of your life, or how has this changed your life, getting over perfectionism?
Great question. It's really just allowed me to feel a lot freer. And for example, I will sing as part of my workshops, and there have been times where I might screw up a lyric as I'm singing, and I'm really okay with it. And part of my message is about vulnerability, and that when we're vulnerable, it's a strength. When you put up that mirror of perfection, no one can relate to it, and it disconnects us from ourselves and from others. So I use singing as a metaphor for that vulnerability. And so I just feel much freer. I feel I can share more of the good, the bad, and the not so pretty. And if I make a mistake, I can laugh at it a lot quicker and just keep moving on.
Yeah, I noticed that one of the things you said also was that you're integrating more than compartmentalizing, right? Could you just explain what that means? Because I know that a lot of us tend to compartmentalize, and so talk about integration just for a minute. What does that mean to you?
Sure. So as I was alluding to before, integration is about being clear on your values and really finding ways to live it your values in many different areas. When I was at EMI Music Distribution, for example, I was very compartmentalized.
Yeah, because you didn't even have a voice there.
Nobody knew.
Secret.
Yeah, and it wasn't okay also to be a parent either.
Really?
Yeah, so God forbid, I mentioned that I had time for my family. So I just felt very rigid, and being integrated is really just allowed me to be more of who I am, and therefore to feel more energy and to thrive.
So you're not feeling the need to compartmentalize so much in your life now, right? You're just sort of like letting it flow more, would you say?
Well, I still have to use judgment. So, for example, I was singing in front of CEOs at association meetings, and for them, it wasn't a good choice because it scared them to death.
What scared them?
The whole idea of being vulnerable, the whole idea of someone coming and doing something different and encouraging them to get out of their head. And it was a difficult lesson for me.
Wow.
That being said, though, I trust that my tribe is there. So it can't please everybody, and we need to really go with our intuition and be educated about it, be knowledgeable, get feedback, and recognize that you got to do what's going to make your heart soar.
Wow. Well, you radiate that.
Thank you. That's so sweet. Thank you.
And if you're watching Rachel here, I think that you can see there is a sense of confidence and being grounded. I sense that. So how can people get in touch with you? Let's make sure people can find you.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
So first of all, I'd love for people to check out my website, which is www.raedevelopment.com. RAE Development, DEVELOPment.com. And then, of course, you can find me on Facebook under Rachel Karu, Karu, author and singer. And I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. So YouTube,
you're
all
doing
the
the social
sources.
media.
Yes.
And can people get a consultation with you, or is
Sure. Yeah, I actually offer a complimentary 45-minute phone or Skype session. Coaching session.
That is a good deal, folks. A complimentary 45-minute session? Well, sign me up.
Give me a call.
Yeah.
Oh, and I would be remiss if we didn't mention the book again. Amazon.com.
Great. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
This has been an absolute joy.
Thank you
for sharing your music.
My pleasure.
Okay, so next we have coming up after the break, stick around, because we have Thomas Quinn coming up, and he is going to give you another version of Christianity, perhaps one you haven't heard before. He is an award-winning producer for the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, National Geographic, Science, the BBC. He's got a ton of credentials, and his book is called What Do You Do with a Chocolate Jesus? So if you can't wait to find out, stick around. Okay, this is the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior. See you soon.
Hello, this is Angela DeJoseph. Join me Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific for the Angela DeJoseph Show. Join me as we venture into health, wealth. We're going to give you news, interviews, and entertainment. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, Live 365, Radio Flag, TiVo Radio, and now live on Facebook. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hey everybody, it's Miss R&B, and I'm inviting you to come and hang with me every Thursday night at 9 p.m. PST for Perspectives Corner with Rona Roe Bennett on America Talk Live. Hear and see interviews and live performances from some of our favorite celebrities and personalities in entertainment, sports, business, and the wellness industries. We're getting lifted and we're going deep, talking about life and empowering the champion in us all. See you there.
Hi, this is Dawn Christie inviting you to join me every Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, for my all-new show, The Dawn Christie Show. Join me as I discuss love, spiritual readings, your purpose, why am I born, what am I here to do. So don't forget to tune in The Dawn Christie Show at 1 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV, reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Welcome back to the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, and our special guest this segment is Thomas Quinn. And he is an award-winning producer, and I mean that. He has been nominated for 2 Emmys, right?
Yes, that's right.
Still counting. And for the Discovery Channel, History Channel, these are really impressive credentials. National Geographic, Science, BBC. And he is the author of What Do You Do with a Chocolate Jesus?
I guess that's when I hold it up.
Yeah,
like
that's your cue.
Comes in lovely sky blue.
Yeah. Does it come in other colors and flavors?
No, I'm afraid that's it. It's just chocolate.
Oh, okay. I understand that you once went into a store and bought a chocolate Jesus, right?
Well, that's what's actually inspired the title, was the fact that a friend of mine, shortly after college, he was a party buddy of mine. And he went down to an art college in Florida, and he became a born-again Christian. And he invited me down to this Christian revival fair. I thought he was kidding. He wasn't. And I went down there, and it was like big, circus tents, and people were giving lectures on how Jesus had saved their souls, or, healed their marriages, or warned them away from liberal congressmen. And among all the tchotchkes and Christian rock bands and everything they had down there, they had a bunch of churchy paraphernalia for sale, including a hand-sized portrait of Jesus made of chocolate. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, well, what do you do with a chocolate Jesus? Do you worship it? Do you save it? Do you share it with 12 friends as the last dessert? Is it like the Eucharist, where it turns into the flesh of Christ when it hits your lips? And if so, does that make it okay for a low-carb diet?
That's true.
A lot of searching questions. And that sort of started me on this sort of humorous deconstruction of Christianity, which I think we need.
Yeah, and I love what you say about Jehovah, or this is the God that I was brought up with, Jehovah. Now, I think I agree with you, because I always thought that Jehovah had some serious anger issues.
Yes. By the way, Jehovah is an incorrect name. Jehovah is actually a medieval misspelling of Yahweh. So,
really?
Yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses haven't caught on to this yet.
So should I change and call him Yahweh? Is that
Yahweh is usually the
He
name.
likes that better. Will he strike me down if I don't call him Yahweh?
Boy, that's his department. I don't know.
Well, just in case, since we're not sure, I'll
Okay.
call him Yahweh, okay? But I agree. I mean, this guy seems to have some problems. I mean, somebody would do something and he would destroy like 5 cities and I mean,
Yeah, he didn't usually handle things with surgical precision. It was
yeah.
sort of like, Sodom and Gomorrah or,
Yeah.
you name it. And pretty much he wipes the slate clean
a
and
lot of
starts
collateral
over.
damage here, right?
A lot of collateral damage.
Yeah,
Had a lot of anger issues.
Right.
He was an evolving character, yeah.
Yeah. What other things? Let's see. He wasn't too fond of women either. I noticed that because in my religion I was brought up with "Thank God I wasn't born a woman." So and then Eve did everything wrong.
Well, I think he created Eve because when he originally created Adam, you have your only company in the whole universe is a naked guy.
That's true.
Homoerotic tension there, and
Yeah.
Yahweh wasn't really good with the gay thing.
And that's true.
So I think he created Eve to kind of relieve that tension.
Eve instead of Steve.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's still a jealous God. So he
True.
said no hanky panky. So therefore they had to hang around Eden not having sex.
I see.
And there wasn't really a whole lot else to do. So I'm not really sure what they did passing the time. I guess that's why they were reduced to talking
we had other
to snakes.
people. We won't. You're right. We won't go into the serpent hanging around and all that stuff, right?
No, that's a whole other
That's
story.
a whole other. And there's apples and all kinds of things. It's,
Right.
and fig leaves and I don't know. But so tell us about the book though. Is this do you kind of break this down in the book or?
I do. The book is mostly about the New Testament, about the Christian half of the Bible. And it basically gives you a whole aerial view of the whole religion, but it does so from a humorous perspective. It's a sort of laugh out loud is usually the comment I get most often. And it's a way of having a fun time for not particularly religious people to read about the whole history of the faith and its political impact on our country. So you learn all about the New Testament, what Jesus actually said versus what people claim he said. It kicks around a lot of the big issues. You'll find out that the Bible is actually pro-choice. Interesting stuff like that.
To tell us about that, how?
Sure. There is nowhere in the Bible that says that abortion is immoral or a sin or anything like that. It never discusses abortion at all. And the only place in the whole Bible that even gives you the slightest hint that of how we should regard the unborn is in Exodus 21:22. It's an Old Testament law that says that if 2 men are fighting and a pregnant woman gets caught up in the fighting, that they must pay a fine and causes her to lose the child, that they must pay a fine.
So there was a fine for.
But if you kill the woman, then it's eye for an eye. It's a death sentence.
I see.
So one is treated like capital punishment, the other like a parking ticket. And that's because it's obviously the death of a woman and the death of her fetus are regarded as 2 radically different things, which is the pro-choice view. And that's the only mention of the subject anywhere in the Bible.
And did I tell you, folks, that we're doing some controversial material here, but that's perfectly okay for this show.
It comes with the territory. Yeah.
So, and what if Jesus ran for president? Do you think he'd make it?
Well, I do talks based on this as well.
Yeah,
I do one called God Needs Therapy. I do another one called America's Pagan Family Values, because our country is really based on pagan values like democracy and free speech. Nothing like that in the Bible.
So in other words, what our country is based on is actually, would you say, the opposite of what's in the Bible, or?
It isn't the opposite. Our culture has been primarily Christian because most people regard themselves as Christian, but our Constitution and our government are based on the pagan values of ancient Athens, who were the first ones to invent democracy.
I see.
So for those who think that you need to believe in a god to have democracy, better start worshiping Zeus, because he was the god of fashion at the time.
I see.
And so democracy, the only ones in the Bible mentioned who actually practiced democracy were the Greeks and the Romans, and they were the bad guys.
The Zeus party, I can see it now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Or the Athena party or what have you.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, that's why our government is housed in buildings that look like the Greek temples of the temples of ancient Greece instead of medieval Christian cathedrals. It's why the emblems of our values, democracy, liberty, justice, are all represented by pagan goddesses and not by Christian saints or Jewish prophets.
Interesting. And to go out even more on them here, I think you also mentioned in your book a few things that the founders had to say about religion.
Yeah, it goes through the whole New Testament and talks about Jesus and what he actually did, and then it talks about how the church got started and all the extra baggage they larded on to things, all the no-sex stuff, a lot of them added that, and how the church evolved, and then eventually the American Revolution and what role religion really had in the founding of the country and the founding fathers' attitudes, and they were kind of sketchy about religion. They believed in God in a kind of generic way, but they were not at all holy rollers or fundamentalist Christians by any means.
And definitely wanted to keep it separate from.
They definitely wanted, right, the American value is not to promote Christianity. It's
really?
To promote the individual right to choose what you want to believe. That's what the government protects.
That's a concept, huh?
Yeah, really. They ought to try it out, which is one reason why I wrote the book, because of too much religion in politics.
Right.
And people who are not religious need some ammunition to fight back.
Yeah, and maybe a gentle reminder, to some that of the, the original.
Well, religion is our deepest personal beliefs, and it's nothing less than that.
Right.
But it's also nothing more than that. It's just your personal belief.
Right. And sometimes your direct connection with whatever you feel is a God force or a spiritual force or whatever, sometimes which can be totally outside religion, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, it depends on how you choose to interpret it. It's I always considered it very interesting that Virgin Mary sightings always happen in South America. It's like she really needs to show up in India or China where, there's not a lot of PR.
That's true.
In the New World, you stand on any street corner in the entire New World and say, hey, would you like to talk about Jesus? You'll get a lot of answers. The one answer you won't get is who? The word's kind of out in the New World. So
yeah,
she doesn't need to really show up that much.
But I want to explore this concept of Jesus running for president if we could.
Oh, yeah,
I
Jesus
think
in 2012.
You have a chapter on that, right?
Yeah, and I do a talk about Jesus in 2012. Could he win?
I think he lost.
Yeah, well, the problem is that if you listen to the Sermon on the Mount, he says things like, love your enemies and forgive those who persecute you and so forth. Well, can you imagine running on a platform of love the terrorists and forgive the people who attacked us? Not exactly a winning slogan, especially in the churchy parts of the country. So it's amazing that we have such a Christian country that anybody running for office based on the Sermon on the Mount can't get elected. So I don't know that Jesus would do too well these days.
And also, I think you say something about certain groups that Jesus might embrace or not shun, at least, or wouldn't he be accepting of everybody?
I'm not sure. Did you have something specific in mind?
Yeah, I think you said that there wouldn't be any, gay hatred or.
Oh well, Jesus certainly never said anything about homosexuality.
Right.
St. Paul had a lot to say about that. He was more of a don't ask, don't tell guy.
Right.
But Jesus had nothing against apparently homosexuality was not high on his priority list because he never mentioned it.
Right, never mentioned it, and would probably be accepting of all kinds of, lifestyles, religion, I would think.
The qualifications are believe in him, believe in the resurrection, love God, and get through life without being a complete crap weasel, and you have a pretty good shot of getting into heaven.
That's your summary, huh?
Yeah.
So what else does the book cover?
Well, as I say, it covers the role of Christianity in the founding of the country, and it gives you everything from the 9 levels of heaven that were postulated in the Middle Ages to the hierarchy of angels that exist, to a history of hell.
A history of hell.
A brief history of hell.
Tell me, how did hell start? I've always wondered that.
There is a vague mention of it as a lake of fire by Jesus early on in the New Testament, and there are references in the Old Testament to Sheol in the Jewish religion, although they technically don't have a hell.
Oh, I didn't think Jews had a hell.
No, they don't. No, the Christians came up with a wonderful motivator, which is that not only will you be punished now, but we'll punish you after you're dead, and you can't even,
Yeah, eternally.
Yeah, so that's a real motivator to kind of get people on board.
Yeah. You really get a lot, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. So we go down how to become a saint. The steps to that.
How could I become a saint?
Well, it's a whole process. The Catholic Church was kind of winging it for the first 1,000 years, and basically whitewashing the history of some of their favorite people, and some of them really needed whitewashing. And the rules were formalized more so over the last 700 years or so. And you have to be sort of elected. You have to have miracles associated with you somehow. Mother Teresa, for instance, had miracles associated with her, although one of them was actually a miracle where they photographed a dark room and it magically came out lit. And they thought that she was specially imbued. It turns out it was a new stock of Kodak film that had come out that year. God needs a little help now and then.
And I also see that you tell us how the Old Testament was written, right?
Yeah, the Old Testament, we give a sort of, to get you up to speed on the New Testament, we do a brief history of the Old Testament, starting from the dawn of time and then going into all the revisions and rewrites of rewrites that finally went into coming up with the Old Testament around 250 BC. And so when you have, it's basically, the Bible is really a collection of books. It's not just one book. And it's been sort of gathered and rewritten and perfected over the years. And in the Old Testament, it actually came from two separate Jewish traditions that wove the two traditions together into one single chronology, which is why when you read the Old Testament, a lot of verses and points are repeated. And the stories are told twice. They're called doublets. And that's because there were two traditions that were reconciled into one. Don't always make a good fit, though.
And the mystical part was cut out, the Kabbalah, right? Kabbalah?
Well, that was a separate thing. Yeah, that was more of a particular branch of Judaism that occurred after the writing of the Old Testament.
I see. So, of course, we are saying anything and everything here, but I want to know, you're a producer, mainstream. What made you write this book?
It was a personal experience of going through the born again experience. Shortly after I discovered the chocolate Jesus down in Florida, I was kind of a philosophical person and I would try to explore different things. And so I thought I'd go into Christianity based on my friend's recommendation, and went through a year of about the sort of dipping into this fundamentalist mentality. And it's a powerful and intoxicating mentality.
Right. What were you searching for?
I think it was more of an intellectual pursuit. It started out, and then it draws you in emotionally, and unfortunately, you end up with a political agenda inevitably attached to it.
Well,
to
it
where
offers
Jesus
kind of
is
camaraderie, doesn't it? The whole
it
Christian
does.
thing.
It does.
Yeah.
It offers you hope in dark times, which is a very powerful thing, and there is a sense of communion and of love among the worshipers and so forth. So religion can unite people in a very fundamental way, but it also divides people equally with equal profundity.
Right.
It unites you locally, but divides people globally.
Right.
And that's the problem.
And it can unite you, and of course we know that it does many wonderful things. So you were searching for something though at that time in your life, though, right?
I was right out of college and I was searching for the greater truths, whatever they were. And so I tried everything from transcendental meditation to Buddhist chanting and whatever else I could fit between girlfriends and bong hits. And the Christianity thing seemed a logical way to go because it was the fundamentalist movement was just really picking up steam back then. And so I decided to plunge into it and kind of went off the deep end. And when I came out of it, I had to question what I had just been through. And being an inveterate smartass, I took a humorous approach to it and spent about 20 years thinking about it before I finally wrote the book. What do you do with a chocolate Jesus? Which, by the way, can I mention where you can get it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon.com as paperback. It also comes in Kindle. And I also narrate the audiobook, which you can get on audible.com or iTunes.
Good. So in the minute that we have remaining here, so is this a book for people who agree with, let's say, this different take that you have on things? Or is it a book that you think,
anybody can read it, but skeptics will probably enjoy it more because it basically makes that case. But I have had ministers and priests read it, and they loved it, and they may not agree with everything I say.
What
did
they like about it?
They liked that it was funny, that it was good-natured, that it kind of stays light and doesn't get too heavy-handed. And they even learned a couple of things. They discovered a couple of things they didn't know.
Is this a book that maybe some Christians could laugh, get a few laughs out of,
Absolutely.
or laugh at themselves?
If you have a sense of humor about yourself and your beliefs and kind of keep it all in perspective and know that is your beliefs, then yeah, you can get a lot of laughs out of it. Like the most common comment I get from it is that people laugh out loud, which is great because the comedy part is a lot harder than the religion part. Believe me.
True. Well, thank you so much. This has been really.
And I have by the way, I just want to.
Yes,
I have a website.
Oh yes,
it's
please.
trquinn.com.
Okay.
And there's contact information there.
Okay.
For the talks that I do, you can hear audio bits I do and little video bits that I do.
Facebook page? Or?
I'm on Facebook as Thomas Quinn. I'm on Twitter as T Rex Quinn. And I'm on LinkedIn, all over the place.
Any upcoming projects for television?
Working on something for History Channel about the big history of mountains and water. So.
Oh, wow. So you can find Thomas all over the place in both mainstream and social media and everywhere.
Upstream,
and,
downstream.
Upstream, downstream. And What Do You Do with a Chocolate Jesus? That's the name of the book. So next week, thank you so much, Thomas. Next week, we are going to be joined in studio by Amanda Johnson, and she's going to tell us more about her book that she wrote called Upside Down Mommy. And this is what she calls the butterfly approach to parenting. She talked about it a little bit at the top of the show. And Donna Jones is going to join us, and she is a change innovation facilitator, speaker, and leadership consciousness coach. And Donna has an upcoming book called Take Your Whole Self to Work. She'll be in the studio with us, and our guest expert at the top of the hour will be Kathy Guggenauer. And if you're an author or speaker, Kathy is a virtual assistant, and she works with authors and speakers to help promote you. So this is something that authors really need. So thank you for joining us. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior. This has been The Book Beat, and you're listening to LA Talk Live, where we are more than just talk.
We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound.